What is agriculture? If I asked many of you all, you would dread the idea of waking up in the morning, putting on work boots, and heading out to tend the field for the day. However, to be quite honest, this is a myopic view of the word. It is only through exposure, though, that I grew to understand the deeper definition. As a Boy Scout, learning about plants, animals, and conservation was my definition of ag, and I loved it. So much so, for my Eagle Scout project, I led a team to replant 60 trees at the Houston Arboretum post the 2011 drought. In high school, I would go on to volunteer at the Houston Zoo, helping patrons and providing education and resources, as well as attend a spring break trip focused on the conservation of endangered species at Big Thicket National Preserve. It is not until I got here, though, that my deepest definitions of this word were cultivated. Here, I learned about meat processing, plant and soil science, animal diseases and sanitation, and so much more when I had the opportunity to travel abroad to Costa Rica, studying sustainable ag practices and coffee production, as well as in El Salvador, where I had the opportunity to build water wells for rural communities. Now, all of this exposure occurred for me over the last 12 years of my life. But in these next 18 minutes, I would like to provide you all with some exposure to new thoughts, ideas, and practices that will help you have a deeper understanding of this word as well. So I ask again, what is agriculture? We'll take a look around. What do you see? For me personally, I see clothes made of cotton, the world's most utilized fabric. I see a stage built of wood from a forest we know not of. Even in the futuristic society we live in, with supercomputers in our pocket, I still see agriculture with the mining of ore to build components for these phones. Agriculture has a hand in all of our daily lives, whether we know it or not. However, in today's day and age, I find it quite imperative that we do know. The United States Department of Agriculture states that the agriculture, food, and related industries contributed roughly $1.264 trillion to the U.S. gross domestic product in 2021, a 5.4% share. The output of American farms contributed $164.7 billion to this sum, about a 0.7% of the U.S. GDP. The overall contribution to agriculture to the GDP is larger than 0.7% because of sectors related to agriculture that rely on agricultural inputs in order to contribute added value to the economy. Sectors related to agriculture include food and beverage manufacturing, food and beverage stores, food services and eating and drinking places, textiles, apparel, leather products, and forestry and fishing. In other words, if the world is a car, agriculture is the engine that makes the car go. This makes sense when we acknowledge that 40% of the global population earns its income from ag. Why am I stressing these statistics? To really bring to light how essential agriculture is to so many industries. So how come all we think about is waking up in the morning, putting on work boots, and heading out to tend the field? How did this become the colloquial definition of agriculture? Well, this is bound to happen when a community of people have been continually disenfranchised from one of the world's most vital industries. Imagine producing food, cotton, sugarcane, and so many more agricultural products necessary and never receiving a share of the profit. Sounds pretty bad. Well, this is exactly what occurred post-slavery in the Reconstruction era in this country. Former slaves with little to no education were all but likely to fall susceptible to the faulty system of sharecropping. What is sharecropping? Well, although slaves were free, they were not allowed to own land. Thusly, sharecropping was a system in which former slaves continued to produce agricultural products on former slave owner land, not for equal and just compensation, but for literally a share of the crop. Imagine being a coder at Apple, and every year your salary, they came out and told you, you get an iPhone, you get an iPhone, and you get an iPhone. Or being a car mechanic, and after fixing everybody's car, your payment is you get to fix your own car. How unjust to be skilled men and women in one of the world's most essential industries and be inadequately compensated due to the color of one's skin. This occurring for generations, what mindset could this breed in a community of people? The faulty system of sharecropping that held free slaves back from accumulating wealth was only the beginning. Years and years of disenfranchisement assumed upon the African American community. Far after the Reconstruction era, take the Pigford versus Glickman case of 1999. This is a class action lawsuit filed by Black African American farmers at the time against the United States Department of Agriculture, claiming that they racially discriminated in their allocation of farm loans and assistance from the years 1981 to 1996. The settlement occurred April 14th, 1999. And to date, those farmers have received $1 billion credited to them. $1 billion. Did you know that at one number per second, it would take approximately 31 years, 251 days, 7 hours, 46 minutes, and 40 seconds to count to 1 billion? And what is money but the currency we exchange for our time? Mind you, those farmers had to live from 1981 to 1999 receiving nothing. $1 billion by 1999, accounting for inflation, actually would have been $1.8 billion that those farmers should have received. So, if $1 billion was the settlement, $1.8 billion is what those farmers should have received, and it takes 31 years, 251 days, 7 hours, 46 minutes, and 40 seconds to count to 1 billion. Imagine what those farmers could have produced had they not been racially discriminated against. Imagine all the time they'll never get back. Now, from being enslaved to an inequitable deal to even years after Jim Crow, for discrimination to be occurring, generations could find themselves less than inspired to pursue a career in this vital industry. Studies as recent as 2021 denote that in 1920, the total number of Black-owned farms was 925,710, or about 14% of farms. But by 2021, just 1.4%, or 48,697 farms, are Black-owned and operated. 14% to 1.4%. Causation could never equal correlation, but how unfortunate that these timelines coincide. Flash forward to today. We are more removed from agriculture than ever before. From what we are told are local, organic, fresh produce, to the future of what we may see in our stores one day soon. Agriculture is everywhere, and if people blink, they'll miss it. As of March 21st, 2023, the FDA gave a no questions response to a company's lab-grown meat product, deeming it safe to eat. This cultured chicken cell material, their definition, not mine, has actually already begun being sold in Singapore as of November 2021. And I don't know about anybody else, but for me personally, with how expensive things are, I need to at least be eating something real. Mind you, before inflation was an issue, think back, not too long ago, there was a time where there were no groceries to be had. In 2020, for the health and safety of the human race, the world had to stop. Of course, we all know this occurred due to the coronavirus. In its own way, though, this serves as a perfect example of why everyone should have a hand in agriculture. When the grocery stores are empty and supply chain collapses, imagine the instant usefulness of a garden in your backyard. You now possess the ability to feed yourself and your family. There are eras in human history where this type of intrinsic knowledge was passed down almost to the effect that it was common sense. Specifically for African American communities, we would have benefited from having agriculture in our backyard because at that moment, we realized the lack of resources existing in viable distance from our communities. During Corona, food deserts became proportionally more identified in minority communities than anywhere else. So this begs the all-important question. How does one re-implement agrarian practices into their daily lives, as well as how do we grow ourselves in an industry that we've been marginalized from? Well, we vote with our dollar, or as they say, put your money where your mouth is. Start ditching the grocery aisle and start visiting your local farmer's market. Not only are you receiving fresher, less processed, more local produce, you also support farmers that look like you and help to end the marginalization by going straight to the source. In 2016, data provided by the United States Department of Agriculture, ERS, notes that only 14 cents of a dollar spent goes back to farm share. Farm share, however, is not what goes to the farmers' pockets when we buy from the grocery stores. Farmers on average take 7 cents of that 14 to reinvest in seeds, fertilizer, and other things necessary to grow more product. So, what are we really spending on when we go to the grocery store? It's not the food, but we're spending on the convenience for the food to be packaged in the aisle for us. Another way to bridge this gap is to increase the locality of your food. What do I mean? Well, the 2008 Farm Bill, a key tool in agricultural and food policy, defined local as produce transferred less than 400 miles of the product or within the same state that the product is produced. Studies estimate that the average food mile, however, is 3 times this distance. So, how do we increase locality? A business model called farm to table. Much like a farmer's market, you interact directly with your farmer and your food. The experience will go something like this. You would meet with a local farmer, discuss the prices of produce or cattle. In regards to cattle, you would have a conversation about the cost and the cuts of meat you would receive. The farmer's operation would butcher the cattle, you pay the farmer, and just like that, your food is now farm to table. You've cut out the middleman. Agriculture on the macro is an essential industry for every other industry. And on the micro, who grows the food we all eat is very important. Years of mistreatment and failed promises of 40 acres and a mule have left there to be a lack of farmers that look like me. Representation matters, how our industry is marketed matters, and what we eat matters. Now, do I expect you all to never go to a grocery store again? I know that's very unlikely to occur, right? But I do hope this exposure to this information has you take a little more look at your receipts when you do go to the grocery store. As well, if you have the opportunity to go to a farmer's market, you feel inspired to do so. But don't fret, look no further than your own institution, Prairie View Agricultural and Mechanical University. As a former ag student myself, I am proud to tell you all today that the ag department is hard at work becoming the solution and convenient solution to our own community. With the recent completion of our $5 million, 9,000 square foot meat lab on campus, in the near future, students, faculty, and the surrounding community will have the opportunity to purchase their meat directly from the farm. Deep down, there's a farmer in all of us. If not to grow, if nothing else, to make better economic decisions. Post times that the world has stopped, and in times that our dollar needs to go further than ever. Thank you.